Welcome to the fourth beer of Oktoberfest. It is Festbier from the Brewery LBK, and I am here today with Real Estate Inspector Leonard Duff, who is the owner of Integrity Inspections of West Texas. Cheers. All right, Leonard, for anyone who doesn't know, what is a home inspection? And as a corollary, what is it not?
Well, a home inspection handles, whenever anybody asks me that question, my first answer is an inspection entails over 1,600 items on any given house. Now, that doesn't mean that you're looking at 1,600 individual items. What it means is it entails 1,600 items. So you may have 10 items you look at on a water heater, or you may have one item you look at on a light switch. So it covers a lot of things, but there are certain things it does not cover. It doesn't cover things that we can't see. So if there's something going on, say, inside of a wall with an electrical wire or something like that, we may not be able to indicate that or be able to figure that out. What we do is look for an indicator that something else is going wrong, something wrong with an outlet, something wrong with a switch,
All right.
something along that line. Another big thing that isn't covered by a home inspection is the condition of the inside of pipes. People think that that's automatically covered. We do tests called a functional flow test, which does check to see if water's backing up. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that the inside of the pipe is necessarily perfect.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So you were talking about the light switch and things like that. When you're doing the inspection, if there's something you can't see, you can't actually cover that, right? I mean, as part of your report, if there's something in there like, let's say, and this is one that always I see a lot on inspections, is lights weren't working. But if it's a burned out light bulb, you're not investigating the source of the problem, you're simply reporting the problem. Is that right?
That's right. Something like a light bulb, I may go a little bit more in depth than that because there's so many times that there's a light bulb burned out.
Right.
So that's, in my codes, now some people just say, light doesn't work. In my code, I take it a step farther, just to try and help the client out a little bit. If there's a lot of light bulbs that are burned out, or even if there's just one, I'll say, hey, it might be a bulb that's burned out on this, which gives you as the realtor an opportunity to go, let me go throw a light bulb in there. See if maybe it'll work. But if not, then I'm still covered by telling you that it didn't work when I tried to make it work.
Right. And so you can only report on what you can observe.
That's exactly right. But the thing of it is sometimes you can make observations of what's going on and make a decision that there might be something else going on. So particular cracks in walls and in ceilings, windows that aren't opening and closing correctly, doors that aren't opening and closing correctly, walls that are even leaning or movement, those all indicate foundation issues. So I can't necessarily say there's a foundation issue because there's generally floor coverings. And on a slab, you can't really see it. But I can see enough other indicators that tell me you need to have it checked out.
Right. And so a lot of what you do also is refer people to other inspectors. If it's something that needs much more in-depth, maybe the HVAC, the heater and air conditioner system, maybe it needs a more thorough inspection than what you do by a registered professional in that field or foundations.
And you make a great point there. They're the professional. I know enough to know there's a potential issue. I don't diagnose the problem. So what I'm doing is aiding you in saying, hey, Mr. Client, we need to have an HVAC guy come out here because the AC system wasn't working correctly. Right. He's the expert. I don't claim to be. I don't pretend to be. And if somebody asks me a question, a lot of times I'm going, I'm not going to try because I just don't know the right answer. I just know it's not working.
Right, and no one can know everything.
And that's exactly right. But the thing of it is, the nice thing about an inspection is, and this I tell people a lot, when you go and look at a house, you fall in love with the house. Right. And you go, I want to live here, I love this house. And all of a sudden, rationality kind of goes away. Okay? When I go into a house, I don't want to live there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to buy it. I just want to look at that house and say right or wrong. Now, like I said, when I do a report, I try to move away from just the right or wrong because I try to find some middle ground and explain because our reports can be really scary. And you've seen them.
Yes.
You know exactly what they look like. But I try to find that middle ground and let a person know, okay, yeah, there's this wrong or there's that wrong, but it's, work through it. Or sometimes, hey, it might be scary and you might want to think about where you're really at on this.
So why does a home buyer need to get an inspection?
Partially for what I just saw. When you fall in love with something, no matter what's wrong with it, it looks perfect. And the other thing of it is, you might go, hey, this light switch works, or this light switch doesn't work, I'm not worried about it. But there might be something else going on that you're not familiar with. A great example of that is an inspection I did with a ceiling fan. And the ceiling fan was noisy. I noted it was noisy. Me not really thinking a whole lot about it. Well, then I know the handyman that went through and did a bunch of work. When he started doing it, he actually found out there was a major electrical issue. The ceiling fan was actually underpowered, and at any point that house could have burned down.
Oh, wow.
And that was just purely from something being noisy.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. Someone else with more knowledge than me picked up on that and said, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And potentially saved some lives or saved some money or saved a lot of things just by making a little observation that somebody else that walks in and just wants to buy it may not have made.
Yeah. The thing I always tell people is about that Tom Hanks movie from the 80s or 90s, The Money Pit.
The Money Pit.
Yeah.
I saw a video on that last week. It was awesome. Where the house is just like falling down.
Exactly.
It was just great.
And you don't want, and sometimes you don't know that's coming if you don't get the inspection. The inspector can tell you things like, well, we had one just the other day where as you walk through the house, you noted that there was a downward slope, and then you crawl around under the foundation, and under the pier and beam house, and you're seeing that the foundation is leaning a little bit. And had that not been pointed out, the buyer, was obviously concerned about it once we got into that point of the inspection. So having that knowledge, yeah.
And truly on that too, I mean, when it comes to foundation, it gets so expensive. Yeah. Certain aspects of the house become so expensive, and that's where I get worried about clients. Because sometimes, I mean, the nice thing is, and you can say this, it's all negotiable. The seller can say, yeah, I'll pay for it. They can say, no, I'm not going to.
Right.
So then it comes back to the buyer. I've informed you, and we've had an extensive conversation, especially on that house, and it turned into one
on
where...
several houses,
yes,
to be fair.
Of course.
To be fair, yes.
But sometimes it turns into, is your client prepared to do this?
Right.
And sometimes they are. They're like, hey, I've got money in the bank. I don't care. I want this house. We're great. Other times, this is all they can do. And that's what we're here for, is to watch out for them. Like I've said it before, I'm not here to kill deals. I'm here to facilitate.
Right.
But I'm here to inform.
Right.
And when someone says, hey, that's only, a few $1,000s, I've got that. That's fine. But then you start saying, well, there's costs associated with the AC's gone out, the foundation's bad, the roof is bad. And they start going, well, that's gonna be some money. And you kind of go, yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. It's going to start getting expensive. We're not allowed to quote, or we aren't supposed to quote pricing. But in the same breath, everybody knows, hey, what does a roof cost? It's several $1,000s.
Right.
And so that's what we're there to do, is to protect. We're there to protect your buying client. We're not there to do anything for the seller. We're not there to help the seller's realtor. We're here solely for the buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a little bit ago about the home buying process being inexpensive, or the repair side being expensive. What does a home inspection cost? And I know it varies from size and person, but can you ballpark just the cost?
Yeah, and inspector to inspector, they're going to have different price points on what they do. But for me, if a house is less than 2,000 square feet on slab, it starts at $325. If it's pure and beam, we have to do a little bit more work. We have to go underneath the house. We have to look at pipes. We can see pipes, which is nice. We look at the foundation itself. We look to see if there's water seeping, if there's anything moving or anything. So you had $50 on top of it. It's $375 for a pier and beam. And then our company, the deal we run is we do a free sewer line inspection if they pay before closing.
That's cool.
Yeah, which is where we actually run the camera down through the sewer line. We can find out if there's roots or stoppages or water standing, all sorts of fun little things. I often, people are like, what have you seen there? I'm like, you really don't want to know, nor do I ever want to ask. And I've heard some stories. I've heard some wonderful stories, especially from plumbers. They're like, you just don't want to know. The best one, though, I think I heard is where they said they thought a kid probably flushed a sock down the toilet.
Oh, wow.
So there were socks stuck in the sewer line.
I had what's that stuff called where it's the paper and tar?
Orangeburg.
Yep. We had an Orangeburg sewer line one time, and 3 months into the house, all the stuff's coming up out of the clean out into the backyard, and it had crushed enough. It had crushed, but it had been okay enough for the initial tests because it just hadn't flooded. But once it got full of water, it started backing up. A few showers and a few flushings of the toilet. Ugh,
and to put that in perspective, too, I did one up in Amarillo last week, and we took the cap off, and there was water standing in the line, which is never a good indication. It wasn't clear water either. So right there, we didn't even run the camera. The realtor's like, don't worry about it. He brought a plumber out the next week. The plumber ran his camera after the water had probably dissipated, ran it both out to the sewer line connection and ran it under the house, which we do also. And he started looking at it, and there were cracks and breaks and everything in this line. Ended up quoting $50,000 for a complete replumb on the house.
Wow.
And that just started from pulling a cap and just looking at it.
So when you're talking about $300, $400, $500 for a home inspection, that's really not very much money to, in my opinion, to go look at things and see what could be happening before you step into something that's a $50,000 repair.
That's exactly right. When you couple it together with all the other costs associated with selling or buying a home, title insurance, homeowners insurance, fees paid to lenders, everything like that, you're going to find that we're really not on the high end of what we're doing.
Sure.
And there's some people out there that charge more. There's some people out there that probably may charge a little bit less. I'm not sure. But you know, for what we do, we feel we're fair, and we feel we do what we need to do, and our customers aren't just a number. They aren't just that dollar figure. It's not a matter of, you know, just bringing home that paycheck.
Right.
That's not what it is to me. You know, I would rather help somebody and inform somebody, and even help them out a little bit if I have to, one way or another, just to make certain they're served correctly.
Yeah. Well, you've called me up several times, days after the inspection, to ask a follow-up question and check on things. So that's always been very obvious to me.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just like the other day when I went to Home Depot and grabbed a piece of wire so I could confirm the right size. You know, it's when you don't see something and you have that book at home, or you know there's a resource you can go to. You may initially put something in a report and then go, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to do some research. Don't tell your client to hang out for a little bit.
Right.
I'm going to get that report issued,
Yeah.
but I may amend that later on,
Yeah.
which we can always do. So again, that's just serving the client and trying our best to not scare the client. And there's some people out there, they don't take that time, and they don't try to educate through what they're doing. And that's a big piece of what I feel my job actually is.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I think we've already covered this question. The next question I was going to ask you is, what is it? We asked what does it cost to get a home inspection. What does it cost to not get a home inspection? You just basically quoted $50,000 is the price of it.
It could be a lot of it.
That's not the quote.
No,
but
no,
it could be a lot.
It could be a lot. I mean, and I found that out just from, because I asked the realtor, I said, so what'd you find out? He's like, oh, it'd be $50,000 because the house has to be completely replumbed. And ironically, now looking back at that one, it was really weird because I picked up on something outside of a bathroom. There was a hall closet. And I picked up on the fact that there was grout missing in the tile floor. The finished wood had actually pulled away from the wall, and there was a little bit of staining on the wall. Mm-hmm. Now when he's telling me that it needs a complete replumb, because I had alerted to that, and I'd said, hey, this little closet smells musty.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting now to me to hear what the plumber said, because I'm going, clearly there's more problems in this area than what we thought there were.
Yeah.
You know, so it really comes back, and it makes you feel good when you're like, hey, you know, I kind of picked up on something that's probably indicating something. But I mean, yeah, I mean, think of it, $50,000 for that replumb, and it was a good sized house. It was a 3,000 square foot house, something like that. So it's not, you know, a lot of even smaller houses with a 50-foot sewer line. I've heard quotes of $10,000 or $15,000 for sewer lines. You know, several $1,000s for a roof. Foundation, I mean, I've heard tens of thousands of dollars depending on what's wrong with the foundation, because they may have, and nice thing about a pier and beam, it's a heck of a lot easier to pick up than a slab is. You know, there's benefits to it for sure, but no, I mean, it can run into a lot of money, or it could run into very little, changing out a switch or a plug, just because you don't like the way it's set up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about Leonard. How did you become an inspector?
Well, a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was actually in BNI. I was a lender at the time, and I met the owner.
Okay, tell us what BNI is.
It's Business Networking International.
Cool.
And it's a referral group that I'm a member of. We refer within our own group,
A
basically.
lot of working professionals in various industries, helping connect people.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They connect you to people you know, or people that people know, just on down the board. Like Kevin is a great example of that. He's someone that introduced me to someone who introduced me. Well, you came to me that way. Yeah. Because introduced me to Aubrey, to Jason, to you. Yep. So it's just it's that whole learning how to network is a lot of what it is. So I was in the group as a lender at that point, and I actually met the owner of American Integrity Home Inspection Services at that time, and then he had approached me a couple of times and asked me if I ever wanted to become an inspector, and at that point I wasn't really wanting to do it.
Now, he was in the BNI club.
He was as the inspector, in the inspector seat. Yeah. And so I, passed on it. Well, we finally started talking again, and he asked me to come work for him, and I decided to in 2019.
Yeah.
So I worked for him for about a year and a half. I got my inspector's license, and then earlier this year he asked me if I wanted to buy the company. So in June I purchased the company, and here I am.
That's cool. So what did you do before? Oh, you were a lender, but you've done other things in real estate, I believe.
Yeah, I was a lender for a very short period of time. That was not my cup of tea.
Right.
You know, some things just don't work, and that wasn't working for me. Most of the last 20...
Which happens in real estate. You
Yeah,
see
it
a
does.
lot of people who step into it in one area and then pivot into another area. I found that very interesting, that a lot of people in real estate have experience in another aspect of real estate.
That's right. And so for most of the last 20 years before that, I worked for a title company, for various title companies. Once I came out, I moved from Phoenix about 10 years ago. Once I came out here, I worked for Stewart Title for a number of years. They trained me. I was a title examiner, which basically meant I examined all the restrictions and easements and such on the properties. Did that for a number of years, and when I came out here, I actually was trained to become an escrow assistant and escrow officer, actually do the closings, closing table type work, and then I was actually moved up to a commercial closer, did some really big deals here in town, and then left that for a little bit, went to do some lending, went back into title, and then I ultimately stepped into this job.
That's cool. So how'd you get to Lubbock? You haven't always lived here, have you?
No. I've lived in Phoenix from
Right.
until 10 years ago.
Yeah.
From the day I was born until 10 years ago.
Oh,
So,
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Whole lot
So,
there.
well, 11 years ago now, I guess. So, I mean, for over 30 years, I lived in Phoenix. My wife's family lives here in Lubbock. They moved here probably 13 or 14 years ago. So, being in real estate in Phoenix in the latter 2008, 2009, 2010 was not a great thing. So, I came out here and got into real estate in what's proven to be a much more stable market.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Stable's good.
Definitely. Stable is always good.
So what do you like to do when you're not doing inspections?
Well, that's hard to say. It's more of what my kids like to do. You know.
And that's always the case, right?
That's it. But I involve myself with what they do. You know, I love coaching baseball, coaching softball, things like that. So I'm usually always coaching my kids through the summer, make that work into my schedule somehow. But
in the summer, that's got to be tough too, because that's one of the busiest times.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
But the thing of it is, and that's a nice thing about owning a company, you figure out how to make your schedule work a little bit simpler.
You need to start a hockey league.
Hockey league.
I think you play sports in the winter.
That's it. Yeah, I don't know. My daughter might go for that. My son would be like,
Okay.
no, thanks. And so I coach him almost every year. I get to sneak in and coach her once in a while, softball or baseball, something like that. But I enjoy doing those kinds of things. I always make it a priority to make certain that they've got something that I'm there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if I have to race back from something that's 3 hours away in 2 hours. I'm going to be here. That's just kind of who I am and what I am, and everybody knows that. And I tell people that straight up from the beginning, and they're really understanding. They're like, I get it. I get it. You've got to be home for that. So I'm happy with that. And so we do a lot of sports type stuff. My daughter is involved in practically everything you can think of when it comes to school, and that she does English writing and jumping and such. So we just got her that horse about 10 days ago. So
nice.
We're out there every single day brushing a horse and riding a horse and teaching a horse.
How many do you have?
Horses?
Horses, yeah.
We have one horse on site with the trainer, one horse at home, and then 2 donkeys.
Okay.
So yeah. And
I was thinking I had several in my head, but I wasn't sure.
we have several of everything.
Several of everything.
Yes. We switched from the indoor animals, it seems, to the outdoor animals. So yeah.
All right. So what other animals do you have at home?
Well, we've got at home there's the horse, 2 donkeys, 12 goats, a pig.
So are you doing is it the cute little goats you see on all the YouTube videos where they're jumping around and
They do.
goat yoga?
They do. That's when they're babies.
Okay.
So they do grow up at some point, but they're still fun.
Okay.
They're just great. It's just like a pig. If you've never watched a pig, they are the happiest things you'll ever see in your life. And he is just a trip. He'll run around, and if you make him a mud puddle, he'll scoot through it and roll on it. And then he just wants to come and say hi because he wants to rub it all over you, So, but I mean, they are just happiest animals. And maybe he's the exception. I don't know, but he is a trip.
So a friend of mine says that baby goats are fun, but they grow up and become adult goats and they're assholes.
Some of them.
Is that about right?
Some of them. You know, I found that some of them have character. We had a big boar goat, and I mean, this thing, if he stood on his back feet, he'd look me in the eye. He was huge. And so, I mean, but he just wanted to play. And like we had this old salt and pepper billy goat with the beard, the big horns and everything. And his name was Lane. And the big goat's name was Barbecue. The previous owner named him and then didn't have the heart to do it. Okay. Well, Lane would be walking along and Barbecue would come up and he'd want to play. So he'd come up, he'd rear up, and he'd turn so he could butt heads with him. Lane would be facing away. He'd just face to him, butt heads, and turn back away. And they'd do this all day long. He'd just turn and butt heads and face back away from him. But if you bent over in front of Lane, I think it was Lane, he'd butt you in the butt. Because he was just, but he wouldn't hurt you. He was just doing it to screw with you. I mean, it was hilarious. But no, I mean, they all have a personality to them. And I mean, we've got one goat that just hates us. But, you know, he is what he is. But the rest of them are just wonderful. I mean, my wife would be like, here, bring one in the house. You know, she's like, you know, the pig can live inside. I'm like, no, he can't. No, he can't. He's good out there. You know. But, yeah, no, we have a lot of fun with our animals. We really do. Yeah.
And when you talked about rushing home from things 2 or 3 hours away, you do travel all over. I've always been shocked and impressed, I guess, by that. A lot of people in real estate kind of work in their area or something, but you're all over the Texas Panhandle.
Yeah.
So you're licensed in Texas, right?
That's correct.
So anything inside Texas, but you've been up into like the North Panhandle places. I grew up in Dumas. Texhoma, I was going to say, you've been to Dumas before, and Borger and Pampa, and then Texhoma, so yeah.
I'm actually scheduled to do one on Monday in Canadian.
Oh, wow. All right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I looked at that and went, 3.5 hours, you know. But it's just part of it. And it's, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It just fulfills a need. Yeah. Some people, you know, people see things. You get out into some of those small areas, and it gets expensive. Sure. People want to just kill people on the price. Yeah. You don't have to have as good a customer service if you're the only one that does it up there. Sure. You know, so it just, we fulfill a need. Yeah. That's all it boils down to. So what do you do when you have that windshield time? Are you know, I know you and I talk fairly often. Oh yeah, definitely. So you do a lot of phone calls. Do you have podcasts, audiobooks? Just, you know, I listen to talk radio. I've got radio. Yeah. Right. I mean, I like to listen to talk radio just because I like listening to different sources about what's going on in the world, and not to get political or anything like that, but I just don't feel like you can get information from one source and rely on it. Sure. So I like to get multiple sources, multiple sets of information. And there's times I'm sitting there yelling at the radio. I'm like, you say you get your news from places other than Facebook? Oh yeah. Ooh, yeah. I don't know, man. That's like primary news sources. I know. But I mean, I'm even yelling with the guys on the radio. I'm like, you guys are morons. You know, it just is what it is. So I mean, I just like to get as much information as I can and try to draw from that and make a decision instead of making it from one source. You know, I don't think everybody, no matter which side you're on, I don't know that you're 100% right, because you're always tainted to an extent. Sure. So if you can get 2 or 3 sources, then you can kind of start to locate the truth a little bit. Yeah. But I do that, and windshield time. Generally, I'm calling people when I'm trying to not fall asleep. Have a good conversation. So that's why you're always sleepy when you call me. It's like I was just about to nod off, and I decided to call you instead. It's the safe way to go, isn't it? You know. So no, I mean, but some of those drives do get long, and some of those roads are really straight, and it's actually better to be having a conversation with somebody, because you don't lose track of what you're doing when you're doing that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm just driving. Sometimes I'm listening to the radio. Sometimes I'm, you know, yelling at people because they're driving like morons or whatever. I mean, it's all part of it. I love it when I drive to Amarillo sometimes, though, because there's these fields, and they'll have cattle in the fields or something, and so you'll notice something. Like one time I was driving back from Amarillo, and there's this whole set of cows, and there's this mound of dirt in the middle. There's a horse standing on top of it, staring at the cows. Okay? And so I'm like, wait a minute, I need a picture of this. So I drove down, I came back. Well, by the time I get back, the cows have parted, the horses got down. Well, the cows went back around him. He runs back up on top of the hill and looks at the cows because he's terrified of the cows. So I'm snapping pictures and stuff. You know, I have fun like that. I do a lot of presentations and such, so I get pictures of things like that. And the thing I've noticed since I became an inspector is I'm so much more observant sometimes. And I'm like, I need that picture because I'll need it later. Right. You know, or nobody's going to believe this. You know, I need this later. So where are you doing presentations? B&I. I do.
Okay,
I do
okay,
B&I.
B&I. Okay.
I also do presentations for, if a realty company wants me to come
Yeah.
do them, or a lender wants me to come do them, or whatever. I do, spread or slideshow
Okay.
presentation type things.
Okay.
I can't think of a PowerPoint. Don't want to say slideshow. It makes it sound like it's from the 50s or
Right.
something. But yeah, PowerPoint presentations, or I'll just do verbal presentations, or just whatever anybody
Okay.
wants me to do.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really do enjoy doing that. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks for hanging out with me and chatting some and just
Yeah.
telling us all about inspections in the world of Leonard.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
You bet. You bet. All right. Well, we will see you back tomorrow or the next night. I'm not sure. It's not the 12 beers of Christmas. I'm not posting every day, but we'll see. We'll see you in the next video, which will be the 5th beer of Oktoberfest. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
See ya.